Good evening, welcome to ITV News Meridian.
Tonight's headlines in the south. Don't take matters into your own hands. The family of a teenager killed outside a supermarket appeals for calm as 4 people are released on bail.
The winners and losers of Theresa May's reshuffle, so which of the South's MPs now have ministerial jobs?
A classroom gender gap crisis. Why boys are twice as likely to fall behind as girls. So should parents be to blame?
And Lizzie's mammoth paddle along canals and waterways to highlight the plight of our rivers. Good evening. The family of a 17-year-old boy who died after a fight outside a convenience store in Bournemouth are appealing for calm and for people not to take matters into their own hands.
Jack Gudge was found unconscious on Wimborne Road in Winton in the early hours of Saturday morning.
Police arrested 3 men in their 20s and a 15-year-old boy on suspicion of murder. They've all since been released on bail.
Hundreds of people are expected at a vigil for Jack this evening, as Martin Dowse now reports.
A constant stream of both friends and strangers were pausing at this spot today to remember Jack Gudge, a young man clearly well known and well liked. The 17-year-old was found unconscious here on Friday night after the emergency services were called to reports of a fight outside this Tesco Express. He couldn't be resuscitated. Close friend Gabby, just one of those today who wanted to see the spot where she lost a friend and leave a tribute.
Yeah, we've known each other for about 4 or 5 years. He'd always walk, like the type of boy that would walk me home, like from a party, or he'd bring me hours early in the morning. Like, he's just the most down-to-earth boy I've ever met, like ever. And he's like not got a bad bone in his body at all. When I found out, it feels so surreal. I used to hear from him every day, and now I'm not going to hear from him. It's just going to be heartbreaking.
It was almost the exact spot where another tragedy happened 15 years ago. 42-year-old Clive Wilcox died after being punched once outside the shop, then a one-stop, in an altercation with a group of youths. His killer later pleading guilty to manslaughter. That another family is suffering loss and heartbreak is deeply felt by the local community, police keeping a reassuring presence on the streets. 3 men in their 20s and a 15-year-old boy have been arrested on suspicion of murder and released on bail while investigations continue. Officers are appealing for witnesses but are increasingly concerned about the large amount of postings and chatter on social media surrounding the incident and what that could lead to.
I would encourage everyone that either posts on social media or that can influence those that are doing so not to post anything that is inflammatory, that is threatening, or that could prejudice the investigation.
So to try and calm the situation, Jack's mother Jolene has issued a personal message. She says, "Words can't describe how thankful I am for all the support, kind messages, flowers and cards for my wonderful, beautiful, funny son." But she adds, "His dad and I request that no one takes any action on their own behalf, as this will effect the justice that Jack rightly deserves." This was Jack a few weeks ago at his school prom with girlfriend Nicole Kearley, his life ahead of him. This evening, friends and neighbours will attend a memorial vigil for him close to his home to remember that life, now sadly lost. Martin Dowse, ITV News, Bournemouth.
In other news, a troubled ambulance service here in the south has been warned to make significant improvements to address serious failings. The Care Quality Commission says the South East Coast Ambulance Service, which covers Sussex and Surrey, needs to increase the number of staff deployed to patient care and in the NHS 111 service. CCAM's chief executive has apologised.
Rail passengers who have suffered months of chaos on southern trains are being warned to expect more disruption over the August bank holiday.
Yes, it's as work continues to redevelop London Bridge Station, with many months of work still to come.
But how's it going so far? Our transport correspondent Mike Pearce has been finding out.
In just 6 weeks' time, tens of thousands of passengers will start to use a massive new concourse, escalators and 3 new platforms at London Bridge. It is by far one of the biggest ever upgrades for Southern, Thameslink and South Eastern passengers. At the end of August, it all starts to go live. But there's a warning of major disruption over the holiday and for more than a year after it. Cannon Street trains will not stop at London Bridge.
Well, we've been working on the project now on site for 3.5 years. and in August we're about to open the new concourse downstairs. 2/3 of the whole concourse at the end, about 6 times the size of the existing concourse.
Well, here at London Bridge they're spending around £1 billion on the station alone, and the most significant part of work so far is due to open at August Bank Holiday. But looking around, there's still masses of work to do. Network Rail is painfully aware the work must not run late. We've been walking around today, there's still a hell of a lot of work to do, 6 weeks to go. How confident are you? Because this can't overrun.
It can't overrun, and therefore I'm very confident. All our focus is on making sure that it is ready. I think it's a bit like when you buy a home. You think it's never going to be ready, and then suddenly it is, and that will be the case here.
When the work is complete in 2018, it will allow up to 24 trains an hour from the region through London. It will also help the disruption faced by Southern and Thameslink passengers.
Southern passengers will benefit because we'll have this new concourse that they can use, the same as they can use their existing one, but much, much larger, much better facilities, and much more open, so a much better feel to their environment.
Meanwhile, the Southern disruption continues, with around half of all trains still late, despite 341 cancellations. The chaos was made worse by overrunning engineering works at Horsham today. Back at London Bridge, though, work goes on, and we're promised it will end on time. Mike Pearce, ITV News, London Bridge.
Meanwhile, passengers are being told to avoid using London Bridge this evening after a sinkhole was found underneath the railway tracks at Forest Hill, closing some services. More on that story in our late news.
Tory MPs from our region spent the weekend nervously waiting for that phone to ring as Theresa May continued to appoint ministers for her new government.
Well, there was bad news for some. New Forest West MP Sir Desmond Swayne lost his job as an international development minister. But there was good news for others. With more, here's our political correspondent Phil Hornby.
His nuclear deterrent, I call the Prime Minister.
Being Prime Minister is all about coping with the unpredictable. Theresa May came to the Commons today for the first time in her new role after a statement on the terrible events in Nice. Alongside her on the front bench, ministerial colleagues old and new. She'd already chosen her cabinet, Surrey South West MP Jeremy Hunt staying as Health Secretary. And now we have new ministerial appointments. Simon Kirby from Brighton Kent Town gets an important job as Economic Secretary to the Treasury. Portsmouth North MP Penny Mordaunt and Damien Hines from East Hampshire have become ministers at the Department for Work and Pensions, as has Caroline Noakes, the MP for Romsey and Southampton North. Gosport MP Caroline Dinage has moved from the Justice Department to Education, but stays as Minister for Women and Equalities. Robert Sims from Poole and Steve Brine from Winchester become whips. Their role will be to make sure legislation gets through despite the government's very small majority. And the Meon Valley MP George Hollingbury becomes Mrs May's Parliamentary Private Secretary. In other words, her eyes and ears among the Tory backbenches. But arguably for our region, the most important minister will be this man, Chris Grayling, the new Transport Secretary, who has to sort out the problems on Southern Rail and decide about South East Airport expansion. It's thought he favours Heathrow. Meanwhile, look what was back at Westminster today. That bus, which has now been hired by Greenpeace. They very publicly removed the controversial slogan on the side and replaced it with one of their own. Those arguments go on as Westminster looks forward to a well-earned summer holiday starting on Wednesday, after some of the most frenzied, astonishing weeks it's ever seen. Phil Hornby, ITV News, Westminster.
You're watching ITV News here in the Meridian region, and we're glad you are. Coming up, Simon with a great weather forecast.
Of course, the big question is, how long will this fine weather last, and when will our sunshades turn into brollies again? I'll tell you later.
For more on all of our stories, head to itv.com/Meridian. Any views or news, give us a call or get in touch via Facebook, or why not send us a tweet at ITV Meridian.
Dogs must be kept under control. That's the message from the Queen's Swan marker after a spate of fatal attacks along the Thames.
Yes, sadly, a number of birds have died whilst nesting along the river, killed by dogs that aren't kept on leads. Now, those who conduct the annual count of the swan population are asking for the public's help in looking after local wildlife, as Divya Kohli now reports.
This swan family glide happily along the river in Cookham in Berkshire, but only 3 of the 5 cygnets that hatched survived. They've been a symbol of the River Thames for centuries, but the last few years have seen a significant reduction in their population.
Well, last year it seemed to be about air rifle attacks, a significant reduction in swans because of that. This year it seems to be about dog attacks, and that's what swan uppers are trying to warn the public about.
The Queen's official swan marker says swans have been attacked by dogs whilst they nest in the Caversham, Hurley, Marlow and Maidenhead areas.
Adult birds have been sitting on the nests, the dogs have been off leads, and of course they see the swan, they grab it, and then there's a problem. And we've had a lot of adult birds killed through this, and of course the nests have gone, eggs have been damaged, and that's the end of it.
The annual swan-upping ceremony begins on Monday, and there are fears the numbers have fallen again. Last year, a total number of 83 cygnets were counted, compared to 120 in 2014.
Swans, if they have cygnets around them, like any adults with their young children, they will protect them. We say if you keep the dogs on the lead, it's perfectly all right and the swans won't come near you. Once the swans have actually hatched out and they're cygnets of this sort of age, there isn't a problem. It's all fine. But it's when they're nesting is the largest problem.
As part of the swan-upping event, young children learn about how to look after the wildlife. Experts say education is the best way to protect the birds for the future. Divya Kohli, ITV News, Cookham.
More headlines from around our region now. And thieves have stolen several tons of paving stones from a war memorial in Brighton. The flagstones have been ripped up from the Peace Gardens on Old London Road in Patcham. Some slabs were taken and others were discovered stacked up, possibly for later removal.
A couple have been forced to jump from their yacht when it caught fire near Poole Harbour. Lifeboat crews were called when smoke could be seen coming from the engine. The couple managed to leap onto a passing motorboat.
£100 billion worth of aviation orders have been placed at the Farnborough International Air Show over the past week. Contracts included purchases of 850 aircraft and 1,400 engines. The show remains the biggest in the world. Thousands of people attended the main events and displays over the weekend.
It's gone absolutely fantastic. We've had some wonderful, amazing amount of orders in, over $100 billion of orders in. Clients have had a fantastic week and we're actually up on rebookings for 2018.
New research shows that boys starting school are nearly twice as likely to be behind girls when it comes to basic language skills.
Yes, the charity Save the Children says there is no area of the country where boys in reception year are outperforming girls in that area. In the ITV Meridian region, boys are around 10 points behind girls.
Yes, for example, in Hampshire, the research suggests that 17% of boys are not of a standard expected of them. For girls, it's 9%, so that's a difference of 8%.
In Wokingham, it's 17% of boys and 8% of girls. In Bournemouth, it was found that 21% of boys did not have the necessary language skills. For girls, it's 12%.
Well, the government says it is doing more to narrow the gender gap. With the story, Matt Price.
I expect he lost to Hotosha.
Kane and Cyrus haven't always been two talkative little boys.
He was ringing a bell.
Hard to believe, perhaps, that both failed their basic language test at the end of Year 1. Unable to communicate with other children, it left them isolated.
Nobody wasn't playing with us. And there was only one. And they was walking away.
And their story is a familiar one. A new study tonight claims that boys who start school are significantly trailing girls in early language skills. It says boys are twice as likely to have fallen behind by the time they start school.
So we would be assessing the children through playing with them, engaging with them, and looking to see what their entry level is for communication and language, personal and social, physical development, which are the three prime areas of the curriculum.
The report claims that across the ITV Meridian region, boys are starting school 10 percentage points behind girls. 21% started school this year behind in basic language and communication skills. And last year alone, more than 80,000 boys started reception unable to speak a full sentence. The Department for Education has responded to the report, saying, "We're determined that every child, regardless of background or gender, reaches their potential, and that they're making a significant investment in the early years sector." Back at school, both Kane and Cyrus are now doing well. They're fluent readers and have passed their tests.
I'm proud as a mother. Before, I always read with them, but now they said, "Mommy, I read by myself."
And both no doubt looking forward to the long summer holiday before a new chapter in their learning begins. Matt Price, ITV News.
Well, Gareth Jenkins is from Save the Children. He's in our London studios. Gareth, the government claiming it's putting more money into early years education, but is it enough?
Well, we really welcome the fact the government's putting a lot more money in to support the extension of the number of free places in nurseries. But what we need to see is more money put in specifically to improve the quality of nursery places, so that every nursery in the country especially is led by a graduate teacher, because that really does help those children, including boys who are falling behind.
You see, a quarter of boys in England, 90,000 you claim, started reception class, that's 4 and 5-year-olds, struggling to speak a full sentence. But surely parents should shoulder some of the responsibility.
Well, parents play a crucial role in making sure that children develop their language skills in their early years. That's absolutely right. And the sorts of activities like speaking, singing nursery rhymes are very important activities that parents can do with their children, especially their boys, to help them catch up.
How bad is the problem here in the south of England? Is it any worse than elsewhere or better?
Well, it's around average compared to the rest of the country, but we know that 12,000 boys didn't start primary school last year with the right language skills, and that's too many, and that's why we need to see the action from the government especially to support nurseries in the south of England.
Let's hope you get that support. Gareth Jenkins, good to talk to you. Thanks for your time.
Thanks so much, Fred.
It's 17 minutes past 6 and the ITV Evening News continues with the national and international news at 6:30. Here's Charlene White.
Anger at the French Prime Minister as the country mourns the victims of the Nice attack. He was booed after attending a minute's silence to those killed on Thursday night. Renew or replace, MPs debate Britain's nuclear weapons programme. And has summer finally arrived? Bookies take bets on it reaching 100 degrees this week. Join Mark Austin and me at 6:30.
The time now for the sport with our resident bookie, whispering Andrew Pate, Pate the punter. In that chair on Friday, you gave us an absolute dead cert for Newbury on Saturday with a bit of a strange name. What happened, Andrew?
Yeah, Clem Fandango.
Yes.
I mean, strictly speaking, came third.
Yes.
But,
yes.
Of course, came third.
Yes.
9-2, or on the shoulders, as we like to say in Tic-Tac, on the shoulders, 9-2. If you bet each way, 9-2, you're still up. My pleasure. Right then, so Clem Fandango did only manage third, but good news, Mrs Danvers, the Lambourne trained filly, romped home. Almost 20,000 people turned up for the Weatherby's Super Sprint at Newbury on Saturday, a record for this fixture. And local trainer Jonathan Portman saw a long-term plan come to fruition, with Mrs Danvers winning the big money prize everyone was after.
I was third in it 16 years ago when I first started training, and I've been trying ever since. I haven't had many runners in it, in fairness, but it's very big. You know, we've had a race, we've had a winner at Royal Ascot, we've had a couple of group winners, but this is pretty high, yeah. I mean, you don't win many 250 grand races, no.
The 2016 Paralympics GB team came together in London over the weekend for a gala dinner and press call. The South is well represented across many of the sports, including canoeing, wheelchair tennis, wheelchair basketball and shooting. Wesley Smith caught up with some of our hopefuls, counting down the days to Rio 2016.
Teammates. Some veteran Paralympians with 4 or 5 games under their belt, others representing their country for the first time. All about to embark on an exhilarating adventure.
I think for me, the first Paralympics in Beijing, it was really exciting. You can become quite engrossed in everything that's going on, whereas now I'm not interested in everything else that goes on around the Paralympic Games. I'm going there to compete.
Yeah, it's long hours, 6 days a week we're training, 2 or 3 sessions a day, and it can be long, and tedious, but if we want something out of it, we have to put the time in. So.
Well, we've trained throughout the whole year this year, like every single day. So I guess the training's been quite hard. Like the coaches are trying to prepare us to be the best we could possibly be.
Southern shooting stars are Ben Jesson from Crawley and Lorraine Lambert from Portsmouth.
Fast track through, got to London, biggest experience of my life to date. And it was amazing. As I say, the amount of emotion that just came out as you went through the tunnel into the stadium itself, it just hit you. And to be honest, I was a wall of tears all the way around up until we finished. This time, it's going to be different, but still got to know deep down in my heart that there's the crowds at home cheering us on every step of the way.
We've got some massive competitors in this sport as well. And at 50 metres, you're looking at hitting a quarter of a size of 5p piece. So a 10.9 is what you're aiming for, and that's what we hope to get out there.
Paracanoe is making its debut in Rio 2016, and Jeanette Chippington from Maidenhead can't wait to get out there.
Oh, it's such a great honour. I mean, this actually will be my 6th Paralympic Games. I competed at 5 Paralympic Games with swimming, had a 12-year break, so never ever expected to sort of come back, and so it's, as I say, such an honour and very unexpected as well.
So our teams are ready for Rio, and if enthusiasm alone is enough to go on, we've got a room full of goals right here. Wesley Smith, ITV News, Westminster.
Sir Ben Ainsley's bid to bring home the America's Cup comes to the South Coast this weekend. The latest World Series event takes place in Portsmouth, and the 4-time Olympic gold medalist is in determined mood.
To bring the America's Cup home to Britain, I think it would be righting a real wrong in our maritime and our sporting history. For the team based here in Portsmouth, it's really a big part of what we're about is to bring the cup back to British waters and really have, through that, to have a positive impact on not only our sporting environment but the local community.
And we'll be there cheering Sir Ben on.
Are you tipping Team GB?
All the way.
God help us.
Andrew, thank you. Now, a paddle on a canal might not sound too challenging, but what if you made that a paddle from the most southern point of the English canal system to the most northern? And what if you did the whole thing standing on a paddle board?
Not just that, because apparently you also have all your camping equipment with you. I'm not quite sure how, on the board. Well, Lizzie Carr has done just that to become the first person to complete the challenge, setting off around Surrey and up to Oxford. And she did it to raise awareness of our waterways, and Steve Clamp has been to meet her.
Back on the canals, just days after getting off them. Lizzie Carr possibly knows England's canal network better than anyone, as she has single-handedly travelled the length of them. From the most southerly point at Godalming in Surrey, travelling upstream through the River Thames and on through Oxford, cutting through the Midlands, before heading north, finishing in Kendal in Cumbria. But why? Well, for one, to inspire others to enjoy the great outdoors, whatever the weather, but also to highlight this: rubbish.
I think there's some really beautiful, pristine sections of our network, but there's also some real sort of hotspots that are problematic. And I think people don't really realise 80% of the plastic that you find in our oceans comes from inland sources. So if this was addressed at a local level and people cleaned up their canals and their rivers, we could actually solve a much bigger problem.
As for the journey, some days were sunny, some took in beautiful countryside, But there were challenges and even some tears too, as she travelled the 400 miles alone, loaded with camping equipment, sleeping under canvas for 22 consecutive days.
If it was a really windy day, obviously having headwind meant that you couldn't cover much distance and it was very tiring. It can sometimes get a bit lonely, 12 hours a day on the water.
You need some pretty impressive core strength to stay in control and to keep going for so long, day after day. So it's perhaps all the more surprising to learn that 3 years ago, Lizzie was diagnosed with thyroid cancer.
I was 25 when I was diagnosed, so I was very young, and it was a massive shock. Like, it completely blindsided me and my family and friends. But there's definitely this awareness needed that it does affect young people. It can happen to anybody at any point. It's difficult.
Lizzie has been clear of the cancer for 2 years now, and with plans for further outdoor adventures in the making, she clearly has no desire to slow down. Steve Clamp, ITV News.
Well done to her, and here's another adventurous way to get around, as hundreds of people have been sliding down a road on the Isle of Wight. Excellent. The Bestival Ride Slide saw 600 people slide down Union Street yesterday, and with temperatures in the mid-20s, they were keeping cool and raising money for local charities.
Oh, that looks like great fun. Simon's with us now, Si.
Yeah, perfect weather for it, and today was very lovely as well. You're probably wondering, though, where is that warm air coming from?
Where's it coming from?
Well, let me show you. Have a look at the sequence, and you can see it started in Africa, moved up to Spain, where they've had temperatures in the 40s. Very similar in France. For us, a chilly 33, 34 tomorrow. But yeah, we're still 10 more than average for this time of year. But we were out and about today. We went to the seaside to see how we were enjoying the weather. Does that look like a starfish, that cloud there? This was Stokes Bay, where there were a few sun worshippers making the most of it. A couple of people even brave enough to have a swim. I'm sure one of them's wearing a wetsuit. Mind you, look at this chill here, look there, when that wave comes in. And who needs to swim when you can just throw sand anywhere? That's far more fun. Meanwhile, in Bournemouth, lots more people on the beach, lots more people in the sea as well. And all in all, just a very, very lovely day. But of course, you didn't have to go to the seaside to mess about on the water, because you could also do it if you're in Newbury, or fall asleep on the water, as the case may be. But Swans needed their lunch, and so they were well fed by some very warm people. But top temperature today, Charwood in Surrey in our region, hottest day of the year, 29.6 degrees, Heathrow 29.4 and Middle Wallop 28.8. So that's pretty good. Tomorrow's going to be even warmer.
Brilliant.
Is it going to last and last and last?
I sincerely doubt it.
Here's the very sincere forecast now from the very sincere Simon Park.
From blizzards to pool, driving through Europe. Eurotunnel the Shuttle sponsors ITV Meridian weather.
Now, I know what you're thinking. Don't the schools break up this week? Doesn't that mean that the weather has to turn bad again? Well, make the most of it, because whilst things will turn a little different towards the end of the week, it's actually going to be mostly fine and settled. Not quite as warm as it is now, and certainly tonight is going to be very clammy and humid, with temperatures well up into the 20s in some places. There might be a bit of patchy mist here and there, but that'll burn away fairly quickly tomorrow. And then once again, the strong sun will get to work, and then we're in for an even warmer day than today. We could see temperatures up to around 33, 34 degrees. That puts us in the 90s in Fahrenheit, so exceptionally hot. Remember, the UV levels will be high though, so do make sure that if you are spending any time outside, you are protected from that sun. And again, it's down towards the south coast and around the Isle of Wight, where things will be a bit fresher thanks to the sea breezes. As for your high tide times, well, you can see in Poole, 9:30 in the morning, then around 9:25 in the evening. Then things start to change a bit on Wednesday. Still a lot of sunshine around, but you can see temperatures dropping by a few degrees. By Thursday, we're still dry and fine. Temperatures back to where they should be. Showers, though, arriving on Friday.
Eurotunnel the Shuttle sponsors ITV Meridian weather. Keeping a close eye on summer. The Pollen Count, sponsored by Ilogy Eye Drops.
Well, just at the minute, we've got grass pollen, weed pollen and fungal spores, all causing you problems if you're a hay fever sufferer, and levels are high again tomorrow. And as the weather stays settled for the rest of the week, they won't drop.
And in just a moment, we've got the ITV Evening News with Charlene White and Mark Austin.
Stacey Poole's got our late news. Join her if you can. But for now, from the team here at ITV Meridian, thanks very much indeed for watching. See you tomorrow. Enjoy the sunshine, but do be careful. From us all.
Take care. Bye-bye.